Lively and unrehearsed, we call it Moral Side of the News. We're glad you're with us today. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. With me today is a distinguished panel, Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School, and Reverend Sally McClain, retired Christian Church Disciples of Christ. Welcome to you, panel. School is back in session, and the mask mandate issued by Kentucky Governor Beshear is for 30 days. The order applies to all schools, public, private, preschools, and child care centers. And Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron plans to file a lawsuit against that mandate. Meantime, the Kentucky Board of Education just approved a 270-day mask mandate for anyone inside a school. So turning to our panel, let's hear what you have to say about this latest mask mandate.
I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I'll probably say it again. Thank God Andy Beshear is governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. He cares about us. And it breaks my heart, the abuse that he and his family have suffered since the onset of this pandemic. And the school superintendent from Science Hill, it's relentless. And I feel so sad that just because the governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky wants the citizens of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the children of the Commonwealth of Kentucky to be protected against this deadly pandemic, that he has this vicious abuse.
I believe it was Ken Burns' documentary or story, maybe not, but it was a PBS on John Adams. And I don't know if you saw that or not, but it was a several-part series. And I remember that Abigail Adams took her 4 children to Boston in 1776 to be vaccinated against a virus. And what they did was they scratched the skin and they put the live virus in the skin. It was very controversial. It was very risky. They didn't know what would happen, but she knew that if she didn't, her children wouldn't be protected. The children ranged in age, I think, from 10 to 4 years old. And all 4 of the children underwent the procedure. The little girl, which was the oldest, was very sick, but she came through. The boys, I think one of the boys had to have the treatment like 3 times. And what would happen is within a certain number of days, I think around 10 days, they would break out in what they would call pox, small blisters. And that's how it got the name smallpox. And from that, then they went into immunizations with the military, and then everybody eventually got the vaccine, and the whole world was rid of smallpox. Why can't we take a lesson from history and learn that, when you face this kind of disease, you don't know what you're up against, and what wouldn't you do to protect your children? Wouldn't you do just the simplest thing like wearing a mask to protect any child from being very sick? And if you've ever sat up all night with a sick child or watched a child in a hospital or even watched a child die, oh my goodness, you do not want that to happen. You do not want that to happen. So my comprehension of some of the objections to what's going on here is nonsensical. I just simply can't understand what you wouldn't do to save a child from being sick.
Well, it just seems to me that certain politicians look at the votes, and it's a cold and calculated move. How will I get the most votes? And is getting a vote, is being elected to an office worth making human life disposable? making the safety of children disposable? I don't think so. This, as far as I'm concerned, this is the first existential crisis that I've experienced in 73 years of life. And I hope it's the last existential crisis we experience. And, you know, we've made so much progress in this world, but our coping with existential crises, it's not what it should be. We're the human race. We've got to come together on this one, folks. We've got to come together regardless of where we live, regardless of our path to belief or not, because if we don't come together, more people are going to lose their lives, and there's just going to be more suffering, more needless suffering in the world.
I have a lot of friends who are thrilled that their kids are going back to school right now because they were at home for so long. But as we move into the fall and winter months, when it gets cooler and colder and flu season, how do you see this playing out? Do you think we'll be able to keep these kids in school, keep that mask mandate going, and keep everybody safe?
If you remember, last year, we were all masked when the flu shots were available, but the flu epidemic never happened because we were all masked, because we were all washing our hands or using gallons of Purell. And my ultimate hope is, they're talking about a booster to the COVID vaccine. It's my hope that they can come up with something that would make the flu vaccine, the booster to COVID, part of the flu vaccine. So we would take a vaccine cocktail that would be a one-shot deal that would protect us against the flu and the new COVID variants.
Well, they're also coming up with pregnant women. Or they're saying pregnant people. I thought, okay. But anyway, pregnant people as opposed to pregnant. Well, anyway, so that their chances of being severely compromised with this disease are becoming more and more known. And so I think that the Delta variant creates all sorts of different avenues of response that we hadn't thought about last year. And now with this new variant coming up and the possibility for even more, we need to be as precautious as we were. But I agree that schools need to be in session. I kind of like it when they give the option for some to be remote and still stay at home. Because I think that there are some children maybe that learn better that way than they do in class. But at this point, I think that we're still so new into this that we don't know everything yet.
Also, with what you're saying, Sally, the way that people have reacted to their duly elected school boards, those behaviors have been really totally inappropriate. Once again, the school boards are simply trying to keep our children safe and educated.
And our teachers safe, and the administrators.
Yeah, right.
All of them as safe as possible so that they can meet in person, so that they can go on with life as much as normal as possible. And I think that is the goal. I think that that's what they're trying to do. This shutdown was so, what do I want to say? So it's created such a fallback everywhere, economically, trying to get in even just like wood, or our son in the hotel can't get towels. I mean, it's had just an economic impact that we didn't realize at the time. And also with Stan, our Ford cars, because there are no chips. There are cars everywhere, but no chips. So that economic fallback was not helpful. And I think if we want to prevent that, then we need to do as much as possible that we can do.
All of a sudden, our used cars are worth huge amounts of money. However, that being said, we sell our used car. What are we going to do? I mean, you know, I'm a little bit too old to use a pogo stick.
You're going to buy another more expensive car and you just trade it in. That's what you're going to do. And they don't have them on the lot. I mean, they really don't. So it's kind of a difficult situation. And our son wrecked his car, got wrecked. And so there are no rental cars to be had. So he has one of our vehicles and we're down to one. So we're trying to manage with one. And that's all because of the pandemic.
If you have to rent a car now, you're in for significant sticker shock. The prices are sky high.
So we don't want another shutdown. We're trying to prevent that as much as possible. What we want is a global understanding that we each need to do our share and take responsibility for what needs to happen.
Absolutely. And I've heard if you want real sticker shock, go out and price a 2x4 right now. They're just percentage-wise through the roof. All right, moving on. We'll talk about our second topic here on Moral Side of the News, and we're glad you're here. YouTube reportedly suspended the account of Kentucky Senator Rand Paul for 7 days after the Kentucky Republican posted a video claiming that cloth masks are not effective in protecting against COVID-19. A YouTube spokesperson told CNN that Rand Paul's video is considered a first strike on the channel, which means he cannot upload content for a week. Paul called the move a badge of honor. So, panel, let's talk about freedom of speech, censorship, and social media.
Can he move somewhere else besides Kentucky? Can he just live somewhere else? Join in, Stan. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think that, first of all, for better or worse, what the words of our elected officials have gravitas. They mean something. And for Senator Paul to make the statement that he made, in this time of pandemic, that's like screaming fire in a crowded theater. And the words cause potential hurt. And God forbid, even more. And I don't see his words as being at all productive in any way, shape, or dimension. And it's not a Republican Democrat thing, because there are some Republican governmental officials who've really been terrific in the way that they've handled the pandemic. I think of what our neighbor to the north has done, what Governor Eric Holcomb has done, and to keep Hoosiers safe. And he's experienced the same kind of nonsense that Governor Beshear has experienced.
I'm not understanding his objection to the cloth mask, because I know in the beginning we couldn't get enough masks. And there were companies that made cloth masks that were available that you could order online. So can you explain to me his problem with the cloth mask?
He had cited two papers written by peers that he considered reputable, and that was what he was quoting, that cloth masks are not affected. So that was his basis of his argument.
I've not heard that from anybody from the CDC or from Dr. Fauci or anybody else. So I don't give it validity. I go back again to the fact that we don't have a flu going around because we've worn masks and washed our hands and been careful. So I can't see why any type of mask would not help prevent, particularly a sneeze or a cough or some other problem that we might have that would be airborne and therefore create a contagious issue.
What I have heard people being suggested to, if you're wearing a cloth mask, to double mask. That I have heard.
Well, the cloth masks that I have are like 3 layers thick. So they're not just a single cloth. They're thick cloths. And in my mind, to double mask that would be really difficult. But I'm going with them. I mean, I think they're fine. So I'm hoping that, and I'm glad to see that Walmart and Kroger and other places are now requiring masks to be worn, or at least strongly suggesting. I think isn't it a mandate?
I thought it was, but Sally, when I went to my local Kroger earlier this week, I would say that maybe 40 to 50% of the people in the store were masked, maybe. Now, virtually all of the employees were masked, but not all the customers. And
go ahead.
do they really think they're immortal?
I'm having a hard time trying to understand why they won't get the vaccine. And I've been told that, somebody got the Pfizer vaccine and they're now in the ICU because they got the virus. I thought, well, they had the virus before they got the vaccine. That would be my take on it. And there are always stories to support what it is that you choose to believe. But when we're in a health crisis, and we are in a health crisis, then again, I think that we need to look at the information that's coming out and not base it all on something that we hear on the internet, but base it on listening to actual doctors talking about what's happening.
So let's zoom out a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about censorship. Twitter, Facebook, now YouTube have all banned some political figures along the way. How do you feel about that? Is that okay with you? Is that censorship, or is that just a public company saying you're out?
It's a slippery slope all the way around. It could go against freedom of speech, but as I mentioned before, we are in a time of an existential life or death crisis, and anything that is seen as potentially causing harm to the public, I can understand the ban, because words can hurt. Words can kill. Words can destroy.
Words do matter. And it is time that everybody look around and think before they speak, or if they're thinking from a particular political perspective, try and realize what that's going to do to those people who are following. I think as clergy, we have to be very careful in our congregations as to what we say and how we say it. We can unintentionally come out with something that someone will take the wrong way. And it's just really painful to think that somebody, just for the sake of being contrary, wants to make these kinds of statements.
That's right.
Absolutely right. Let's move on to our third topic here on Moral Side of News. We have a third topic, and we're glad you're alongside to listen and watch our program. A $1.2 trillion infrastructure package is in the news. Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell voted in favor of this legislation. Well, again, here's Senator Rand Paul. He voted against it. McConnell says, I was proud to support today's historic bipartisan infrastructure deal. Paul says, unfortunately, the Biden plan is not just about roads, bridges, and clean water. It's step one of the Green New Deal. So, panel, turning to you both and ask your thoughts on this new infrastructure bill.
It's about time. Have you traveled on an expressway lately? There are potholes there. These roads are over 60 years old, many of them. And where it really gets dicey, the bridges. Thank God the Sherman Minton is being rebuilt. Thank God the Brent Spence between Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati is being rebuilt. Because if those bridges are not rebuilt, that's courting disaster. But there's also other parts of the infrastructure bill. We have the potential to get a passenger rail service once again in the United States. That's wonderful. We need it. I miss it. The only place that there's a real passenger rail service is in the Boston, New York, Washington corridor. So it's about time, and thank goodness that we have bipartisan support, that this is an American program.
Yeah, I think Mitch McConnell saw the productivity of this particular legislation and knew that it could help Kentucky, and thought that it was time that he needed to cross over and be supportive. And I'm in full support of that, actually, because I think, as you mentioned, Stan, there are all these opportunities. Europe has all sorts of trains and rail systems and things going on. And we, as much land as we have in the United States, we really need to have a more comprehensive way of travel than just through cars, as we know, because cars are increasing our interstate volume to the tune of, sometimes you get on the interstate and you think that somebody literally is trying to kill you. And any of those things need to be done. And so I think Mitch McConnell saw the wisdom in what was going on with this particular package and decided to get on board with it. Rand Paul's opposition to it, I'm not really sure what that was about, other than it's just, again, the opportunity to be contrary.
Could this be part of his libertarian philosophy rather than a necessarily Republican philosophy? I'm not sure.
So once this goes to the House, do you feel like it will pass and we'll get these improvements you're talking about?
I hope so. I really do hope so. I think it's time. I don't think we want to see a tragedy happen on a bridge, or we want our interstate system to be so crowded that we can't even enter and exit. I'm really hopeful that this will pass.
Absolutely. As whether Congress goes for it or not, I've stopped making predictions. I just hope for the best.
How come, Stan? How come you stopped making predictions?
Because if I do, then they're invariably incorrect. And
you can't read the mind of the politicians.
We have about 4 minutes left in our program. I'm just going to open it up for anything else that's on your mind today, this week in August in 2021. What are your thoughts?
I don't know how this year has gone so quickly. I mean, it seems like everything slowed down and then all of a sudden everything has been going fast. And I'm looking at August and I'm thinking, we're not far from fall. But I'm also looking at the heat outside and hoping that everybody has air conditioning because it's incredibly hot out there.
You know, this in my world, in the Jewish world, this is actually the 12th month of our year. This current year is 5,781. And Labor Day evening begins 5,782. And so in the Jewish world, this 12th month is used as a time for people to do a reckoning of the entire past 11 months. And before we can ask God for forgiveness, we have to gain forgiveness from people whom we have harmed in any way, by word, by mouth, or by deed. So this is a very serious month for us and a very important month. And it gives us the opportunity to hopefully start the new year with a clean slate.
So I'm asking, is that a whole month-long process where you would go one-on-one with people, perhaps?
Yes, it is a month-long process, and ideally you go one-on-one. And what happens generally is when you come up to a person and said, I really feel like I was unfair to you and did thus and such. Please, what can I do to earn your forgiveness? The most usual behavior is the person will look at you because they won't have any cognizance of what you're talking about whatsoever. It'll be weighing on your soul, on your mind, but didn't register with them at all.
Not on a positive note, but on another note with the Cuomo situation.
Sure.
I have mixed feelings on that, being female and being supportive of non-harassment. But on the other hand, I am so disappointed that they let Bill Cosby go home. So, Stan, do you have any feelings on that?
Got about a minute left.
With Cosby, it was a legal glitch, and that's kind of scary because I mean, the legal glitches can take people out of prison. With Cuomo, I'm glad that it didn't fester.
You know what? That's the way we'll end our program, Moral Side of the News this week. Thank you to Reverend Sally McClain and Rabbi Stan Miles. And new this year, speaking of the new year, if you'd like to catch this program again, jump on YouTube, go to the Crusade for Children page and search for Moral Side of the News. We'll be back again next week with another edition of this program. Until then, thank you, panel, and have a great week. So long.